About emergency action plans in the injured athlete. This also can relate to different things, outpatient facilities or even actually inpatient facilities. Again, how many athletic trainers do we have in attendance this morning? Okay. How many PTs and OTs do we have in attendance? Okay. How many doctors, nurse practitioners, or physician assistants? None. Okay. How many of you have an emergency action plan in place for each one of your facilities? Okay. How many of you practice that emergency action plan on a regular basis? Okay. Emergency action plans provide guidelines and templates for documentation of emergency planning to help prepare individuals for a catastrophic injury situation within sports. I think it's important, again, to understand, like I said, it's also a must for not only the athletic venues, but for if you work in an outpatient facility or even an inpatient facility as well. Some of the top causes of sudden death in sports are cardiac, head injuries, exertional sickling, as Dr. Abruzzi's covered earlier, asthma, anaphylaxis or shock, direct trauma, and also weather-related incidents. That could be anything from lightning to wind to tornadoes. Every school should develop every school or actually any facility should develop an emergency action plan for each of its venues. It's very important to have a plan for each venue or facility, as each facility will have a different infrastructure on how you would implement your plan as to like where EMS would have access to the facility, where they would come in, different things like that. Every emergency action plan should be developed and coordinated with local EMS, public safety, on-site medical personnel, and as well as site administration. The local EMS should know your plan and should be coordinated in a way which allows them the fastest access to the venue in which you're having your event. All the staff should know the emergency action plan, medical staff, which could include athletic trainers, physical therapists, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, physicians, occupational therapists, school administrators, and coaches. Or even if you have a parent or something that's a nurse or anything like that. Emergency action plans specific to each venue should include maps, specific directions, and marked locations of on-site emergency equipment. Also, everyone should know every job of the emergency action plan. If they're part of your medical staff, they should know every job. Because what if a lightning strike happens and it happens to you, and you're in charge of it? I mean, I would want everybody to know what's going on if I got hit with lightning. I wouldn't want them to say, "Oh crap, he's gone," you know. What do we do? But I think it's really important. One of the most important things I think is for it to have specific directions for the EMS. If you call the EMS, in fact, what should you say on the phone? Like you say, this is Jamey Rasberry. I'm calling from Barb High School. We have an athlete on the baseball field. He is unconscious and breathing, sustained a blow to the head. He has a strong pulse, normal breathing. The athlete has no history of any medical conditions. The ambulance will, when it arrives, will enter on the right field side, the south side of the baseball field, on the right field side fence. The fastest access to that gate is off Weaver Road. I mean, that should be very specific on what you're telling the emergency medical system. Big A, you got anything you want to add? Emergency action plans should identify key personnel and their responsibilities as well as a chain of command. Again, your key personnel will be your medical staff as well as your school staff. Again, each person should know everyone's responsibility. You need to delegate someone that's going to be in charge. If you've ever been in the ER and seen a code ran, usually there's a doctor standing back directing everyone what to do, and the other people in the ER are actually running the code. You need to have somebody in charge making sure everything's running smoothly. It needs to be rehearsed annually. It needs to be practiced so that, again, everyone knows every part of the emergency action plan, so it runs like a well-oiled machine. If you have to activate your emergency action plan, this is no time to go, excuse my French, oh shit, what do we do? Documentation. Documentation, I think, is one of the most important parts of any part of your emergency action plan, because you want to be able to record what happened, who did it, and why we did it, because you never know down the road when something legally may come along and you need that documentation to show you did the right thing at the right time. Yep. I'm going to let him. This is Aaron McDonald. He's going to take over part of the talk. We're kind of doing this together.
Good morning. As Jamey said, my name is Aaron McDonald. I'm the administrator here in Calcasieu Parish for the school board. 20 years ago, I started as an athletic trainer, and somehow, and some unfortunate luck, I've gone from the athletic training room to the principal's office. So any of you docs out there or therapists want to examine me, please do so. My wife has questioned that move. But anyhow, today I'm here presenting with Jamey, and we're looking at emergency action plans. And as a school administrator, our emergency action plans are called crisis response plans, but they're one and the same. Key points is you must write it specific to your area, whether it be in the clinic setting, an athletic venue, an office space. Get the people aware of it. Your coworkers, everyone should have a copy of it, and more importantly, practice it, rehearse it. Go through it in the morning time, go through it at lunchtime, go through it on a Friday afternoon when everybody's trying to get to happy hour. Because you never know when an incident may occur at the workplace. But there's three things that we need to know before we start planning. Who are our key personnel? Our basic equipment. And how do we go about implementing it? So if we're talking an emergency action plan, first and foremost, the athletic trainer. Now, here in Calcasieu Parish, all of our schools we have the outreach department through Lake Charles Memorial. Each school has an assigned athletic trainer, but there are other athletic trainers like myself that work in a part-time setting. If I'm assigned to that school, you need to include those people as well as you're implementing or writing these plans. Your coaches. It's nice in a perfect world that our campus is right here at point A, and you go out this door and here's baseball, and you go out this door and here's softball, and out this door is football, and here's the track. But a lot of our schools, because of funds or lack of funds, our main campus and our athletic training room might be here, and our baseball field be across town, or softball field 2 miles this way. You never know. So we've got to make sure our coaches are on board and make sure they're certified and educated on ways to manage certain situations and to assist us if we do indeed have a medical emergency. Our administrators are just as key. Bottom line, something happens at Pasquale High School. Well, the principal of Pasquale High School is who that lawyer, mom and dad, is going to come after. So always include your administrators. Your emergency medical services. In our area, we have Acadian. There's great rapport and communication with them through the different events we host, through swim meets, baseball tournaments, of course, our football games. If you could set aside a date, especially this time of year, as teachers and coaches are coming back to the school, where the coaches, the athletic trainers in the areas, and the EMTs can all practice, whether it be spine boarding, or just go into rotating each year to different schools on how to get onto the field or get onto the playing surface. Should there be a medical emergency, practice is always a good thing. Security. Unfortunately, it's 2016. You have to have security for birthday parties almost. So as we have athletic events and moms and dads get excited with coaches or play callers or with officials, we have to have security. We can also use those security folks when we have medical emergencies. They have that radio that can get us in direct contact with the paramedics or dispatch en route. They can also be the line or the resource that actually calls and initiates our emergency action plan. Probably the backbone of our school, besides my bus drivers and cafeteria workers, are the custodians. And in any athletic venue, the custodians are key. They know where everything's at. They know how to turn everything on. They know how to turn everything off. If something breaks or the lights go out on the scoreboard, they know a way to quick fix it until the right people can get there. So we also want to include our custodial staff in our emergency action plans because, number one, they're always going to have keys to everything. Our coaches, our administrators, they want keys just to the doors they're responsible for. Our custodians have keys to everything. We want to make sure they're in charge because they can know what gate, what key goes to what lock on what gate. And then more importantly, and something we need to think about, our parents that are willing to assist. Most of us have booster clubs, or if our sons or daughters play travel ball in any sport, who's the RN? Who might be the therapist or the athletic trainer, that if we got in a bind, you know they're up in the stands, they know to come on down to the field to assist you, or you can send a student or a student athletic trainer into the bleachers to help, to retrieve them to come help you in the situation. Our basic equipment. Again, I talked about it with the custodial staff being a part of your key personnel. You got to have keys to everything. Laminated emergency action plan postings. I have a daughter going into the 5th grade. The things she can do with a computer, she can make those nice fancy maps and draw it to scale and all of that. If you're in a school setting or if you have a great secretary, let them draw out that map for you. That it's time consuming. And then take it to your media center or your librarian and have it laminated. It should be around every corner of your site. It should be posted in both bathrooms, by the concession stand, the exit ramps to the bleachers, the inside of both dugouts, or posted on both sidelines. So you should have plenty of laminated postings of your emergency action plan. CPR AED training for coaches. Anybody in here not from Louisiana? Any Texas folks or neighbors in Mississippi? Most of Louisiana, okay. In this last session, well, and it will be, I think it's Act 185 as of Monday. Our high school coach, our public schools, we're going to have 2 CPR AED certified staff members on athletic staffs. That's something new. Thankfully, we here in Calcasieu, that's something we took upon ourselves 4 years ago. And our coaches, if you're a head coach or an assistant, or if you teach PE, or if you're a band director, dance line, cheer sponsor, or if you take a large group of students off campus, i.e. student council beta, you must go through first aid AED CPR. We now have AEDs on all of our campuses. Some of our larger campuses, we need more than one just because it's hard. Jamey's at Barb High School, that is a large campus. It's hard to have just one there, and you have different venues in a 1.5 mile, 2 mile square radius. But we have one that's a start. Hopefully we can add to it. Of course, as athletic trainers, we're going to need our kits, but it's also to have first aid kits in the kitchen or the concession stand in case somebody gets burned. From the administrative point of view, if grandma's up in the bleachers and wants to go to the restroom, she slips down the aluminum bleachers and falls, that's an incident report. So we also want to have first aid kits in the press box, in the concession stand, along with the athletic trainer's kit on the field. AEDs and other medical emergency equipment, of course, lightning detectors, fire extinguisher, and I call the radios walkie-talkies medical equipment. The way I like to do things is from an administrative point of view, we have an administrator on the field. We usually have one up in the press box and one roaming. Today's teenage students, yes, they love to be in the student section and be loud and crazy, but every now and then they get bored and they go roaming underneath the bleachers out in the parking lot, so you've got to have an administrator and a deputy usually roaming around. So it's always nice to have that radio walkie-talkie to call and give somebody a heads up or ask for help. Definitely would come in handy as you start correlating, implementing an emergency action plan. So how do we implement it? Well, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but it is a process, and it's a process that's specific to your area. You've got to identify what you do well and what you're already prepared for, okay? Some schools have lightning indicators. Some schools or some teams trust a student trainer with a cell phone with a lightning indicator app on the phone. Some might have multiple AEDs, and so they have it out actually on the field with them. Identify what you can improve upon. A lot of athletic trainers don't have keys like those custodians. I recommend that. Or in the workplace, make sure you can get in and out of every situation. Increase knowledge by looking at the neighbors. I mean, we're not trying to make millions off of writing emergency action plans. In the school setting, it's required by law that we have one. So if you have a neighbor at a rival school or a neighboring school, ask them what their emergency action plan is and copy. I mean, we're here to help one another. Just make it specific as it pertains to including gates, directions, GPS landmarks, when incorporating that in your action plan. Again, consider who your key personnel are. Consider all possible venues. I would recommend, if you don't have one for your school or your area, take a generic map of your facility, include those outside venues, and write just one simple emergency action plan and practice on it. And then as you get comfortable and your personnel gets comfortable, then draw one for a specific area, the gym area. Because if we have a basketball game at night, the main corridor, the commons area might be locked off, so we don't have to worry about crowd control or student flow, or how are we going to get that EMS into the gym where in the school day that gate might be open, it's closed at night because of basketball. Write one for the campus, and then as you get comfortable with it, make it specific to each site you have. And that's what I'm just talking about. Draft a general emergency action plan, have several people review it. Call over your neighbor, your buddy, your coworkers. Hey, can you look at this? Can you go through it? If I'm not here and we have this scenario, could you follow this and we take care of that person safely? And then finally, after your peers review, you're comfortable with it, you create the final emergency action plan. Make sure it's posted in different locations, around every corner, on every wall. And then you've got to revisit and rehearse annually. One thing I tell my students and my staff, as it pertains to our school and crisis response programs, we have to do 10 fire drills a school year. No one in the state of Louisiana has been severely burned or deaths occurred because of a fire in a school building since 1962. So we've got that down pat, the way our buildings are built, the doors that open and close, the alarm systems, the sprinkler system. But we have to do 10 a year or there's a fine. But when it comes to shelter in place, and we're in an industrial area here, we only have to do one a year. An active shooter, one a year. Well, those are things that are occurring more and more. We don't know as athletic trainers or therapists or anybody in the workplace when accidents are going to happen, when a visitor might have a stroke or a heart attack in our lobby, when an athlete might have heat illness. So you've got to be able to think out of the box, get creative, and rehearse and practice. Run for it is not an adequate emergency action plan. We just can't get on the PA, grab a bullhorn, everybody haul butt out of the building, it's on fire, or we just can't, everybody just run on the field and everybody bring equipment if we have an injured athlete. You've got to document, you've got to practice, you've got to adjust and plan ahead. Now this is a good plan. And I'll step aside here. Number one, we have the name of the facility. So if I walk up and we have an incident where someone's been burned in the concession stand at the football stadium, and I tear that laminated EAP off and I give it to this gentleman right here and I say, okay, I need you to call 911. All right, it's got the directions to the site. It's got the GPS coordinates. Some EMS people like those coordinates because of different construction that might be going on in the area. It has a full-scale map of the different facilities. It also tells you emergency personnel that should be on site and their roles or where they're located. Also, how to communicate with them, cell phone numbers. And of course, I've left all this blank, but this is just a good idea. This diagram has the different football fields. So if you say we're on practice field A or B, you can say that's the one, the most western field, or if the one's on the northeast part of our campus. It lists where the emergency equipment is and gives a description and markings. And then it also gives the rules of the first responder. Unfortunately, in my 20 years as an athletic trainer and administrator, I've had a couple of situations. Just some of the things you have to handle, and I truly believe people above you don't give you anything you can handle, but it does pull at heartstrings. In a couple of those instances, down the years later, lawyers have gotten involved in the situation. I understand that. There's been loss. The biggest thing I've done with my staff as it pertains to our school, and you could do with your emergency action plans, is as you include this spot right here, these roles, because you're going to have to get together. I'm not saying as soon as the ambulance drives away or as soon as the fire truck leaves, but you're going to have to meet with those involved and get that documentation. You're going to have to get it saved somewhere and get multiple people to review it, to sign off on it, because it is 2016 and 9 months, 18 months down the road, there's going to be, there's a good possibility you might end up in court. All right, Jamey, you want to take over the NATA statement on timeouts?
Like Aaron was saying, I mean, you really can't practice this enough. We say we do it annually, but you need to do it more than that. I mean, it needs to be second nature. And there's always ways to improve it. If you have to run an emergency action plan, my thing is the next day sit down with the staff involved and y'all talk about ways y'all could have improved on different things y'all did. The National Athletic Trainers Association always recommends a timeout before an event. The purpose of this timeout is to go through a pre-event checklist reviewing the venue's emergency action plan with the athletic healthcare professionals that's on your plan. I always like to do this, especially with the opposing team, so they know where the emergency equipment is, where the ambulance will be located, if we need the ambulance, where it's going to come in. If they have a visiting athletic trainer, I always like to go over and meet with him and let him know if there's anything he needs, where all of our equipment's at, just to make him feel welcome and let him know that if something happens, it will be taken care of. It also helps to produce a decisive, coordinated emergency response and outcome, and it's critical to ensure that the athlete receives the best care should emergency arise. Again, it's just like a little reminder before any event that you can always do to refresh your memory. And again, I mean, as physical therapists, occupational therapists, any of y'all, if y'all are helping out with the athletic team, which many of you do in the area, it's always good to be there before the game for this, so you can meet the other personnel going to be involved if something arises. This is the checklist they recommend. Athletic healthcare providers meeting before the start of each event. Usually, especially like for football, we always meet with the referees. They always want to know who is the person for each team that's in charge. If an injury occurs, who will be handling that. Determine roles and locations of where everybody's located. Establish how communication will occur, and also a backup means communication, because what if you have no cell service? How are we going to call EMS? Location of ambulance routes, again, for the entry and exit of the facility. The designated hospital you're going to be using. That way you don't have to fight with ambulance people about where you're going to send them. No, he's going to Memorial Hospital, or he's going to St. Pat's Hospital. It's closer. Presence, location, and working order of all emergency medical equipment. You need to make sure everything's working, obviously, before you bring it out to an event. Assess potential impacts on the emergency action plan. What if they're doing construction on the road I'm going to use for my entrance? How do I get the ambulance into the facility then? What if a storm arises? Where am I going to, if a lightning storm comes, where's the teams going to go? Where's the fans going to go? You got to think about everything. You got to be a Boy Scout. You got to be prepared for anything that could possibly happen. And that's pretty much all we have. I mean, if there's any questions y'all have, feel free to ask.